You know what I think is one of the most stressful and painful and traumatic experiences a person can go through in life? It's needing to pee and having no toilet in sight. And it's worse if you're sitting in a bumpy car. Well, if you ever had that sort of experience, what you were feeling was your bladder filling up with urine. Like a balloon, your bladder fills up with urine, and that urine starts to push against the walls of your bladder. And there are cells in your wall of your bladder which can sense that. And they're called sensory neurons. These neurons, which we'll see are in the nervous system, carry information to the brain telling you, I have to go to the toilet. And the only thing that's helping you keep the urine in are this set of muscles called the sphincter muscles, which are found at the base of your bladder. Thank God you can control your sphincter muscles, contracting them so that this opening, the urethra, remains closed and the urine stays inside of you. Now, of course, eventually you find a toilet, and there are neurons from your brain which send down information to the sphincter muscles, causing them to relax, and your urethra opens and the pee urine comes out. Well, thank God you can control your sphincter muscles. It's actually something we only learn when we're about 1 or 2 years old, when we have potty training. And thank God for that, otherwise we would have to wear diapers. And thank God we also have a bladder. You know, some people have to live life without a bladder. I leave you to look at why they have to remove their bladder, how they live without a bladder, but it certainly doesn't look very comfortable to me. Of course, interesting ways to help people without a bladder have been invented. So here what you see is a portion of the intestine, a small intestine actually, being removed and being reconstructed into a sort of bladder to help this person who has had his bladder removed. Now, these are some interesting things I just want to introduce this part with so that you guys can go and find out more by yourself. So with that, let's dive into what this second video is all about. It's all about the urinary system. So we're going to look at the parts of the urinary system. We're going to look at the kidney in detail, what's the structure of it, and we'll look deeper into the kidney at a kidney tubule and look at its structure as well. Alright, so let's get going with that. So what are the parts of the urinary system? Well, here is a diagram of it. So of course we have our kidneys. The kidneys are these bean-shaped organs which are found actually closer to your back, about your waist level. They help to filter your blood and remove the waste from your blood and produce urine. Then there are these two tubes from the kidney. They're called the ureters, right? Two of them, ureters. One is called the ureter, and these connect the kidneys to the bladder. They transport urine from the kidney to the bladder. Right, then we have the bladder, which stores urine temporarily. And then we have the urethra, which is the tube, right, the passage through which urine is passed out of the body. The urethra, it's different in length in males and females. I'll leave you to guess where in male or female is the urethra longer. And here we have our sphincter muscle, which I've already talked about, which helps to control the opening and closing of the urethra. So zooming closer onto the kidney, we see that it is associated closely with some blood vessels and the ureter. So here's the aorta, which brings oxygenated blood from the heart, and it branches off to the renal artery, which carries that oxygenated blood to the kidney. The blood goes into the kidney, it's filtered, it's cleaned out, the waste products are removed, and then the blood goes from the kidney, transported back to the vena cava through the renal vein, right, which also carries deoxygenated blood from the kidney to the vena cava. And finally, this area here where the blood vessels connect to the kidney, it's called the hilus. Right, not very important, but just for your awareness, it is the depression where the blood vessels connect to the kidney. Now, one question that's sometimes asked in the exam, and also for curiosity, is which blood vessel contains the lowest concentration of urea? I'll leave you to go and think of that. And so which blood vessel contains the lowest oxygen concentration? I'll leave you to also go and think of that. Right? Of the 4 blood vessels here, which one has the lowest concentration of urea? Hint, it's when the blood has just been cleaned out. and which one has the lowest oxygen concentration. So kidneys are very important, no kidding there. And that's why we're going to take an even closer look at them. And if you think kidneys are not cute, here's a hello kidney for you. Naha. Where are your kidneys located? Well, somewhere at your lower back, at your waist level, somewhere below the surface. So here's a big picture of what the kidney does. What is the function of the kidneys? Well, the kidneys help to filter blood and to produce urine. So the blood that is going to be filtered and cleaned will enter the kidneys through the renal artery. Inside the kidneys, all your filtering processes take place, your waste products are removed from the blood, and altogether the waste products will form urine. So the urine, which contains the metabolic waste products, will be removed through the ureter, and blood, which has been filtered, the filtered blood, will leave through the renal vein to return back to the body. So this is the big picture of how the kidneys work. Now, let's look closer into the structure of the kidney. Now, I know that you've dissected hearts. Here is a kidney, and it looks equally disgusting. And if you dissect the kidney, cut it this way, you can see some interesting division of the kidney into different sections. How many main sections can you see? Hopefully you can be able to see one section on the outside, this dark brownish part. Then there's this pinkish part here, and finally this center part here. Now they actually have names, they're not just called parts. So let's look at it more closely. Okay, so the kidney has two main regions. Right, the first region is the outer cortex. So all this that is in dark brown out here, this is the cortex. Right, so this cortex here, this part here, this is the cortex. Right, and then there's an inner medulla. So the medulla has all these more light colored part of the kidney is called the medulla. Let me shade the medulla for you. So this is all considered the medulla. And the medulla contains conical structures called renal primates. So each one of these shapes here in the diagram, they represent a renal primate. So the renal primates are all found in the medulla. Now very, very importantly, the kidney contains many tiny structures called kidney tubules or nephrons. And these nephrons, so an example is here, okay, it's not so big. The actual nephrons are much smaller because you need to fit about 1 million inside the kidney. These nephrons are the functional units of kidneys. They are like mini filters, right? Each nephron is like a mini filter which helps to filter blood and produce urine. So the kidney contains many nephrons, many kidney tubules, and each nephron helps to filter blood and to produce urine. So together, all the nephrons work together to help the kidney perform its function. In this diagram here, you can see that the renal primates, so each one of this is a renal primate. The renal primates will all project into the renal pelvis, which is this part here. Now the renal pelvis is really part of the ureter. It is part of the ureter which has entered into the kidney. And the function of this renal pelvis is that it is like a funnel which collects all the urine. So urine will pass from all the renal primates into the renal pelvis and then into the ureter. So it collects the urine and funnels it into the ureter. Now at this point you might be pulling out your hair saying, I don't know why I took bio. It's so much parts and names to remember. Keep calm and love anatomy, the parts of the body, and look at this very cute kidney and remind yourself that kidneys are cute and they're fun to study. I heart kidney. Alright, let's move on. So what we're going to do now is that we're going to look deeper. So what we're going to do now is that we're going to take a closer look at the structure of a kidney tubule. Now remember that each kidney contains about 1 million kidney tubules. And each tubule is like a mini filter that helps to filter blood and produce urine. So you need to look at that structure of each individual tubule more closely. And so if we zoom in, we will see. So over here, what you see in this diagram is 2 kidney tubules. One over here and one over here. And what you notice is that The tubule has very interesting structures. They're like this cup-shaped structure here, some rather twisted part here, coiled part here, then a loop that kind of dips down, goes up, and then more coiled parts here, and this thing called the collecting duct. So we're going to take a closer look at this kidney tubule in closer detail. So here's a close-up diagram of our kidney tubule, or nephron. Now, one of the first things you'll notice about the kidney tubule is that it is closely associated with blood vessels. So in the diagram here, you can see the kidney tubule, this yellow colored tubing, and you can see the blood vessels which surround the kidney tubule. Now, this close association between the kidney tubule and the blood vessels allows the kidney tubule to perform its function, which is to filter the blood. So over here, you can see that blood that is going to be filtered can enter the kidney tubule from the renal artery. And after that, here in the kidney tubule, some processes occur which filter the blood, which we'll look at more in the next video. And when the blood has been filtered, when all the waste products have been removed, then the filtered blood will return to the renal vein and then back to the rest of the body. So here's the big picture, and we're going to focus in first on the kidney tubule itself. So we're going to look just at this yellow tubing and learn about the parts of this kidney tubule. Alright, so the kidney tubule, or the nephron, has four main parts. It begins with this Bowman's capsule, this cup-like structure, and then there is a proximal convoluted tubule, the loop of Henle, and a distal convoluted tubule. I know it sounds really confusing and convoluted, but let's take a closer look at it. Alright, so the kidney tubule begins with this cup-like structure called the Bowman's capsule, probably because it was discovered by some dude called Bowman. Right, and it contains, inside the Bowman's capsule, there is a mass of blood capillaries called the glomerulus. Glomerulus. Try saying that very quickly. Okay, we'll see that this is very important later on for filtration. Now, the Bowman's capsule and the glomerulus together are called the renal or Malpighian corpuscle, because biologists just love to make things more complicated. And from the Bowman's capsule, we move on to the proximal convoluted tubule. It is called proximal because it's the first part, and then convoluted because it's coiled and it is a tubule. The proximal convoluted tubule then leads to this loop called the loop of Henle. That means from here down, up again. This loop of Henle, which extends into the medulla and then makes a U-turn and then goes back up to the cortex. And finally, the loop of Henle leads to the distal, the second convoluted coiled tubule. Okay, the distal convoluted tubule. Alright, from the distal convoluted tubule, you can see that the kidney tubule will then connect to a collecting duct. Now, each kidney tubule connects to a collecting duct. So as you'll see later, the fluid from each kidney tubule will move into the collecting duct. Now, however, every collecting duct may collect fluid from several nephrons. Okay, so in this diagram, you can see two nephrons, and fluid from this nephron will flow into the collecting duct. Fluid from this nephron will flow into the collecting duct, and the collecting duct will collect fluid from several nephrons, and the collecting duct will then open up into the renal pelvis, right, which leads into the ureter. So that's where all the fluid goes and eventually forms your urine. So now that we've looked at the structure of the kidney tubule, right, the Bowman's capsule, the proximal convoluted tubule, the loop of Henle, and blah de blah, we can look at how blood circulates around the kidney tubule. So we'll stop here and we'll continue this in the next video.